The doctor gave Lin MMO 3 months to live, but death had chosen the wrong man. One drop of blood would turn a forgotten sandbox into an entire living universe. Before long, the dying young man would be deciding the fate of angels, demons, and mankind. Lin MMO was only 24 when his ordinary future disappeared inside a hospital office. The diagnosis was synovial sarcoma at stage 4, already spreading through his lungs and liver. The doctor spoke carefully, but no gentle voice could soften the meaning of 3 remaining months. Lin MMO had finished college only 2 years earlier and still carried countless unfinished dreams. He wanted success, a home for his parents, and someday a woman he could truly love. Instead, he walked home with a death sentence folded between his trembling fingers. The city remained loud and alive, yet every sound seemed impossibly distant from him. Children laughed beyond his rented courtyard while neighbors continued their usual conversations. Lin MMO felt as though a sheet of glass had separated him from the living world. A violent cough suddenly tore through his body and filled him with helpless anger. He crushed the medical report and hurled it across the dusty little yard. The paper landed on an old wooden sandbox abandoned by the previous tenant. For one bitter second, Lin MMO nearly kicked the useless box apart. Then he stopped, almost laughing at himself for wanting revenge against a piece of wood. He opened the lid and found nothing except ordinary yellow sand. There was no treasure, no secret compartment, and certainly no miracle waiting inside. His thoughts returned to his parents and the pain his death would bring them. Tears blurred his vision as everything he had suppressed finally broke through. One tear fell into the sand. Another cough struck him before he could recover. This time a drop of blood landed beside the tear. The courtyard suddenly became unnaturally quiet. A strange humming vibration filled Lin MMO's head and seemed to come from everywhere. The yellow sand moved. Grains spun across the box without wind or touch, gathering into miniature dunes and rocky ridges. In seconds, a tiny desert world formed beneath Lin MMO's stunned gaze. Every grain seemed positioned with impossible precision. Glowing white words appeared in the empty air above it. The dimensional sand table had activated. Its bound user was Lin MMO. His displayed life energy was 0. Lin MMO reached toward the letters, but his hand passed through them like light. He should have been terrified. Instead, one desperate possibility immediately seized his mind. If this mysterious thing measured life energy, perhaps that energy could save his dying body. Lin MMO touched a miniature dune. Knowledge flowed directly into his thoughts. The terrain inside the sand table could be reshaped through his mind. He concentrated and the dune slowly collapsed into a narrow valley. The change worked, but exhaustion immediately pressed against his skull. Even such a simple act consumed mental strength. Lin MMO stared at the transformed land and realized something incredible. Inside this tiny world, he possessed authority resembling that of a god. Unfortunately, he was an extremely weak god with very limited power. He tried creating water from nothing and failed instantly. The sand table could reshape existing matter, but it would not casually produce what was absent. Lin MMO hurried inside and returned with a glass of ordinary water. He carefully released a single drop into the valley. To him, it was barely anything. To the miniature world, it became a vast and crystal-clear lake. An oasis had appeared in the center of a lifeless desert. New words immediately formed above the sand. The world was ready to receive life. The system asked whether Lin MMO wished to inject the concept of life and begin evolution. His heart hammered against his ribs. 3 months ago, he might have hesitated before touching something he could not understand. Now death had already removed the luxury of caution. Lin MMO accepted. A sensation deeper than physical exhaustion instantly pulled at his entire existence. It felt as though an invisible hand had removed a tiny fragment from his soul. The drop of blood inside the sand began glowing red. Crimson light spread through the miniature lake and entered the newborn world. Lin MMO's blood had become a seed of life. The sand table identified the cost as primal blood. A primitive single-celled organism appeared within the lake of beginnings. Lin MMO leaned closer, but the water still looked completely empty. For several confused seconds, he wondered whether the creation had failed. Then he remembered that microscopic life could not be seen with ordinary eyes. If his thoughts controlled the world, perhaps his sight could change as well. Lin MMO focused on the lake. His awareness moved closer, then closer again. The clear water suddenly expanded into an enormous underwater universe. Tiny points of light drifted through it. They moved. They divided. They were alive. Lin MMO watched his first creatures reproduce and his despair briefly disappeared. Hours earlier, he had been nothing more than a terminal patient waiting for death. Now an entire world contained life because of his blood and decision. He had become its creator. Yet the status panel still displayed zero life energy. Those primitive cells were apparently too simple to produce a meaningful amount. Lin MMO immediately understood the next obstacle. Evolution normally required millions of years. He had only 3 months. Waiting naturally was impossible. The sand table, however, possessed a time acceleration function. Lin MMO could increase the world's speed by as much as 10,000 times. Driven by excitement, he immediately selected the maximum. The decision nearly dropped him to the ground. Crushing fatigue flooded his body, as though he had remained awake for several days. His vision spun and he grabbed the stool before his legs collapsed. Lin MMO finally understood that manipulating a world required a price from its creator. If he abused this power, the world might survive longer than he did. After resting, he looked into the lake once again. Life now raced before him at unbelievable speed. Cells divided, competed, changed, and died within seconds. Entire generations vanished almost as soon as Lin MMO noticed them. Evolution had become a storm trapped inside a glassless box. By sunset, Lin MMO realized he had neither eaten nor drunk properly all day. His terminal body was exhausted, but something fundamental had changed inside his mind. For the first time since receiving the diagnosis, he desperately wanted to survive. He cooked noodles with 2 eggs and forced himself to eat. Even while the pot boiled, his attention kept returning to the courtyard. When Lin MMO checked the sand table again, he froze. Life energy was no longer 0. The number was almost laughably tiny. Yet that tiny change meant his theory had been correct. Evolving life generated energy. More importantly, the system offered him the option to absorb it. The description stated that life energy could repair physical damage. Lin MMO did not hesitate. A warm current entered his arm and spread throughout his body. It felt like gentle rain touching earth that had been dry for years. The stabbing pain inside his lungs weakened. Not much, but enough. Lin MMO began shaking. The sensation was undeniable proof that the sand table could affect his real body. His cancer was no longer an unavoidable executioner. Somewhere inside that miniature desert existed a possible path back to life. Unfortunately, the available energy remained painfully insignificant. Healing a body filled with advanced cancer would require vastly more. That meant Lin MMO could not simply watch evolution. He had to guide it. He returned to the sand table before finishing his half-cooked noodles. Night settled over the old neighborhood. Moonlight covered the silent courtyard while Lin MMO sat beside his tiny world. The life energy continued rising, but single-celled organisms produced it far too slowly. Lin MMO remembered fragments of biology from school. Complex evolution required resources, competition, and environmental pressure. His lake of beginnings was too peaceful. Nothing faced scarcity. Nothing needed to become better. Lin MMO looked at the enormous empty desert surrounding the lake. If life was going to conquer land, plants needed to come first. Plants required photosynthesis. He tried injecting that concept and immediately received a rejection. A necessary condition was missing. Water already existed. Then Lin MMO looked upward and understood. The moonlight above the courtyard was far too weak. He rushed inside, grabbed a desk lamp, and positioned it over the sand table. Artificial white light flooded the miniature world. Lin MMO tried again. The concept was accepted. Primitive algae appeared in the shallows. Green structures formed inside cells while bubbles slowly drifted toward the water's surface. Oxygen had entered the world. The life energy numbers began climbing far faster. Lin MMO absorbed the new energy and felt another wave of warmth enter his lungs. This time the pain nearly vanished. He could almost sense damaged tissue being repaired from within. The effect was temporary and incomplete, but the direction was unmistakable. Lin MMO was fighting back. Soon algae covered the shallow lake and primitive creatures became increasingly active. Producers and consumers were beginning to form the first rough ecosystem. Yet the lake remained tiny and the desert beyond it was still silent. Before sleeping, Lin MMO absorbed another accumulation of life energy and felt strangely peaceful. While its dying creator rested, the miniature world continued racing through countless generations. By morning, evolution had prepared a surprise that even its god had not commanded. Sunlight woke Lin MMO, and for once his body did not feel heavy or weak. He hurried into the courtyard and stopped beside the sand table. A soft green carpet now surrounded the lake of beginnings. Moss had evolved naturally and spread across the wet sand. The first plants had conquered land without direct intervention. Lin MMO zoomed closer and watched tiny green clusters cling stubbornly to the shore. Competition inside this crowded lake had apparently driven algae toward new territory. Natural selection had completed the step Lin MMO failed to force the previous night. The status panel revealed a dramatic rise in life energy. Land plants generated far more than microscopic organisms. Lin Memo absorbed everything. Warmth flooded every organ. Deep inside his body, cancer cells began dissolving beneath the surge of vitality. The progress represented only a tiny portion of the disease. Yet this was no longer simple pain relief. His cancer was truly being destroyed. Lin Mmo looked across the miniature desert with renewed ambition. Moss could survive only close to water. He needed plants capable of spreading farther inland. Ferns became his next target. Their roots, stems, leaves, and vascular structures would completely change the landscape. However, ferns still required moisture to reproduce. One lake could never support a continental expansion. Lin Mmo began reshaping the terrain. Rivers were carved from higher ground toward lower basins. Channels twisted across the desert, connecting spaces that had remained dry since creation. The project drained his mind far faster than changing one small dune. Sharp pain stabbed through his head. Lin Mmo stopped before his mental strength collapsed entirely. Even a god needed rest. 10 minutes later, he returned with a large cup of water. He poured it carefully onto the highest river source. To the miniature world, a colossal flood rushed into the newly carved channels. Rivers spread across the land. Water collected inside basins and formed additional lakes. The once empty desert suddenly possessed a network capable of supporting expanding life. The sand table reported an enormous increase in water coverage. Evolution potential had risen sharply. Lin Mmo injected the concept of ferns into the moss. This time the world accepted his guidance. Small fronds slowly unfolded beside the riverbanks. Lin Mmo watched them spread, already imagining another explosion of life energy. Then his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. An assistant from the First City Hospital asked whether she was speaking with Lin Mmo. She explained that Director Wang had reviewed his medical records again. Several unusual details apparently required a second examination. The hospital wanted Lin Mmo to return for complete tests at no charge. Yesterday, the doctors had practically told him to prepare for death. Now they suddenly wanted him back. Lin Mmo immediately wondered whether the early healing had already produced measurable changes. He agreed to visit the following morning. The hospital could unknowingly become his first independent measurement of the sand table's power. After the call, Lin Mmo returned to his evolving world. Ferns were already spreading their leaves above the moss. Life energy rose faster, but Lin Mmo saw another serious limitation. A world composed mostly of plants would never achieve a complete energy cycle. It needed larger consumers. The lakes already contained protozoa hydras and other primitive organisms. These creatures consumed algae and bacteria but remained too simple. Lin Mmo decided to push aquatic life toward arthropod-like bodies. He introduced stronger movement, better digestion, and jointed structures. The sand table accepted the concept. Primitive aquatic arthropods soon appeared. Some resembled tiny shrimp, while others moved like strange water insects. They immediately began feeding on the abundant algae and moss. Life energy surged again. Lin Mmo watched the creatures dart through the water with growing satisfaction. To a dying man, every one of them represented another chance to breathe. His satisfaction lasted less than an hour. The new creatures possessed no predators. Their population exploded. Black swarms filled every river and lake. Algae vanished beneath their feeding. Moss disappeared from entire sections of shoreline. Producers could no longer replace themselves quickly enough. A red warning appeared. Ecological balance was collapsing. Life energy stopped rising. Then the number began falling. Lin Mmo's face turned pale. His careless intervention had triggered the world's first mass extinction. If the ecosystem died, his only path to survival would die beside it. For one moment, Lin Mmo considered simply erasing the arthropods. He rejected the idea. Those creatures were valuable life forms and would probably reproduce again from surviving populations. Destroying a symptom would not repair the underlying imbalance. Nature needed predators. Fish were too large an evolutionary jump for the current world. Then Lin Mmo noticed the obvious answer. The arthropods could hunt each other. He selected part of the population and injected the concept of predation. Sharper jaws, greater speed, stronger limbs. Most importantly, the instinct to kill for food. The concept demanded enormous mental power. Lin Mmo gripped the table as exhaustion nearly forced him to his knees. Inside the lake's selected arthropods began changing. Their bodies lengthened. Their mouths became bladed weapons. A new hunger appeared behind their primitive eyes. The first predator noticed an herbivore feeding peacefully on moss. It launched forward. Its jaws pierced the prey's shell. Green fluid spread into the water. More hunters followed. The overcrowded lakes became brutal battlefields. Herbivores that had multiplied without resistance were suddenly slaughtered by thousands. Lin Mmo watched without pity. This violence was precisely what the collapsing ecosystem required. Producers recovered, consumers declined, predators established a new upper level in the food chain. The sand table announced that ecological stability had greatly improved. Life energy production accelerated exponentially. Lin MMO finally released the breath he had been holding. His first disaster as a creator had nearly ended everything. Yet the solution produced something even more valuable than simple balance. An evolutionary arms race had begun. Herbivores developed harder shells. Others became faster. Some learned to bury themselves beneath the sand. Predators responded with new hunting methods. Every advantage forced another creature to adapt. The miniature world became harsher but also far more alive. Soon Lin MMO noticed arthropods accidentally crawling onto damp shorelines while pursuing prey. They could survive outside water only briefly. Still, the behavior revealed evolution's next direction. Animals were attempting to conquer land. Lin MMO chose the hard-shelled species already testing the shore. He guided their gills toward air-breathing organs. Their limbs strengthened for walking. Because the concept expanded an existing tendency, the cost was much smaller. Generation after generation remained on shore for slightly longer periods. Finally, the first true land animals emerged. They consumed moss, dead ferns, and decaying organic material. The world's life energy crossed a new threshold. Lin MMO had learned from his previous mistake. Before land herbivores could overrun the vegetation, he created hunters to control them. The strongest aquatic predators received adaptations for terrestrial life. The resulting creatures resembled terrifying mixtures of spiders and scorpions. They immediately hunted the plant-eating arthropods. Another balanced ecosystem quickly formed across the land. Predator and prey resumed their endless competition. Lin MMO became absorbed in watching his world grow. He harvested life energy like a farmer collecting crops from impossible soil. When his alarm rang, he realized an entire night had passed. Surprisingly, his body no longer felt exhausted. The accumulated energy had restored far more strength than his disease could currently consume. Before leaving for the hospital, one particular species caught Lin MMO's attention. These arthropods were approximately the size of his fingernail. They behaved like ants. Workers searched for food. Soldiers protected colonies. Queens handled reproduction. The creatures dug complicated nests and stored plant material. Their society alone was interesting, but Lin MMO soon witnessed something far more important. Several workers attempted to move a fern spore trapped inside a sandy hollow. Direct strength failed. One ant placed a grain of sand beneath the spore. Another copied it. Then another. Together they constructed a miniature ramp. The workers pushed the spore out. Lin MMO stared in disbelief. They had recognized a problem and created a tool-based solution. The first spark of intelligence had appeared. Lin MMO silently marked these ants as the chosen species of his world. For once, he decided not to interfere immediately. True intelligence needed room to develop on its own. He left the courtyard and traveled to the hospital. Director Wang and his assistant both stared when Lin MMO arrived. The young man before them looked energetic, healthy, and completely unlike a terminal patient. Director Wang repeatedly checked Lin MMO's identity. He asked about secret treatment, unusual medicine, and anything else that might explain the transformation. Lin MMO calmly claimed he had merely eaten and slept normally. The doctor clearly did not believe him. A long series of examinations followed. Lin MMO spent the entire morning moving between departments. By noon, the tests were complete. While waiting for the results, he found a quiet corner and closed his eyes. His consciousness reached toward the distant sand table. Hours had passed in reality. Inside the accelerated world, an age of development had unfolded. The chosen ant colony had expanded more than tenfold. Its population now reached tens of thousands. At the center of the nest, Lin MMO discovered carefully maintained fields of fungi. The ants had learned agriculture. Workers carried decaying fern leaves into controlled chambers. Others placed fungal spores onto the prepared material. Specialized workers managed moisture and temperature. A stable food system had been created. This was no longer simple instinct. Knowledge had to be preserved and passed between generations. The dawn of civilization had arrived. The sand table confirmed the birth of a primary intelligent society. The ant kingdom had entered an early agricultural age. Life energy production transformed immediately. The number no longer crawled upward through tiny fractions. It raced. Lin MMO almost absorbed the energy on instinct. Remembering that he was inside a hospital, he stopped himself. A dramatic physical reaction would attract questions he did not want to answer. Instead, he continued observing his newborn civilization. The ant kingdom now possessed workers, farmers, soldiers, and increasingly specialized social roles. Soldiers marched against weaker neighboring tribes. Civilization had created agriculture. It had also created organized war. Lin Mo refused to intervene. Competition had pushed biological evolution forward. He suspected competition between societies might do the same for intelligence. That afternoon, Director Wang called Lin Mo into his office. 2 medical reports lay on the desk. The doctor looked deeply confused. He finally explained that the first diagnosis appeared to have been inaccurate. Lin Mo still had a tumor. According to the newest examination, however, his disease no longer resembled terminal stage 4 cancer. The condition now appeared to be at a middle stage. Treatment might control it. A cure was suddenly considered possible. Lin Mo displayed the relief and gratitude expected from a frightened patient. He repeatedly thanked the doctor. Director Wang seemed relieved to have found a reasonable explanation. When Lin Mo left the office, his grateful expression disappeared. A quiet smile replaced it. Misdiagnosis was the perfect excuse. The doctors had explained his impossible recovery to themselves. Lin Mo would not correct them. By the time he reached home, night had covered the courtyard. He walked directly toward the sand table. The ant kingdom had changed dramatically again. Fungal farms now covered nearly every suitable area near the nest. A stable food supply had triggered another population explosion. More ants produced more specialized professions. Lin Mo discovered small ants with unusually developed nerve clusters. These creatures performed no visible labor. They remained deep within the nest, facing a faintly glowing stone. Their antennae moved in repeated patterns resembling rituals. Lin Mo jokingly called them priest ants. Then he examined the object they worshipped. A dark red substance remained trapped inside the translucent crystal. Lin Mo recognized it. This was his original drop of blood. The primal blood that had seeded all life had become a sacred relic. Somehow the ants sensed its connection to their world's origin. Their first religion had emerged naturally. Lin Mo found the situation amusing. He also recognized the social advantage of shared belief. Faith could unite a civilization. Then he checked his accumulated life energy. The amount had risen beyond 20. Lin Mo absorbed it. A massive current erupted from the sand table. Previous energy had entered him like streams. This surge felt like an ocean. His organs, muscles, bones, and cells greedily absorbed the overwhelming vitality. Cancerous tissue continued disappearing. At the same time, every healthy part of his body became stronger. The process lasted for several minutes. When it ended, Lin Mo slowly opened his eyes. Power filled him. He tested his strength on a massive water jar in the courtyard. Previously, he could barely move it. Now one hand lifted the heavy jar above his head. Lin Mo almost dropped it from surprise. Life energy did far more than heal. It enhanced the body itself. Lin Mo returned to the sand table with a new confidence. The ant kingdom had agriculture, war, and religion. Yet its progress still seemed painfully primitive. Lin Mo decided to introduce fire. He took out a match. To him, the tiny flame was ordinary. To the ants, a second sun suddenly appeared in heaven. Lin Mo flicked the burning match into a patch of dry ferns. Fire exploded across the miniature vegetation. The ant kingdom fell into panic. Workers fled. Soldiers retreated. Yet the priest ants cautiously approached the terrifying phenomenon. One especially bold priest carried a dry twig toward the flames. The tip ignited. The ant raised its new torch. The colony had captured heavenly fire. That priest quickly became the keeper of fire. Generations passed at accelerated speed. The ants learned to preserve flames. They used fire for warmth. They drove away predators. Eventually, an accident revealed cooked food. A worker tasted flesh scorched beside the flames. Cooked meat was easier to digest. The discovery transformed their diet. Lin Mo should have been satisfied. Instead, he noticed a severe evolutionary bottleneck. Ant mouths could not perform precise work. Jointed limbs limited complex tool construction. Exoskeletons restricted brain expansion. Pheromones and antenna contact could not efficiently transmit complicated knowledge. At this rate, they might become brilliant insects. They would never build the civilization Lin Mo needed. His gaze returned to the Keeper of Fire. This ant already possessed a faint connection to its creator. Lin Mo chose it for an unprecedented transformation. He envisioned an internal skeleton, hands with delicate fingers, a larger brain, vocal cords capable of complex sound. Finally, he imagined a body modeled after his own human form. The sand table warned that such a transformation required both mental strength and life energy. It was the first creation demanding vitality directly. Lin Mo checked his reserves. He had enough. He confirmed. The Keeper of Fire began changing. Its shell softened and peeled away. A white internal skeleton developed beneath exposed tissue. Limbs stretched. Front legs reshaped into arms. 5 delicate fingers formed on each hand. The creature's head expanded as its brain developed. Ancient mouthparts vanished. A human-like face appeared. The transformation seemed to contain centuries of agony compressed into moments. Finally, the remaining shell fell away. A tiny naked man stood inside the sand table. He possessed black hair and black eyes resembling Lin MMO. The newborn human stared at his hands. Slowly, he stood upright. A female worker ant that had guarded him approached the abandoned shell. Her antenna touched a rib-like fragment. White light flowed into her body. She began transforming as well. Her change was gentler. Soon a tiny human woman stood beside the man. The pair looked at each other with complete confusion. The man opened his mouth and produced uncertain sounds. The woman copied him. For the first time spoken, communication entered the world. Lin MMO named the man Adam. He named the woman Eve. The sand table announced the successful creation of a humanoid intelligent species. Human civilization had been born. Life energy production made a legendary leap. Lin MMO watched the rising numbers with the pride of a true creator. Other ants feared Adam and Eve and rejected them from the colony. The pair became isolated, yet they possessed fire-human hands and intelligence beyond anything around them. Adam returned to the flames and lifted a burning branch. Light illuminated his face. When he looked toward the sky, Lin MMO saw something new inside those tiny eyes. It was thought. Lin MMO decided his first human children deserved a perfect beginning. He transformed the land surrounding the Lake of Beginnings. Desert became fertile soil. Meadows spread. Trees rose. Fish filled the water. Birds appeared among branches. Sweet fruit grew throughout the oasis. Lin MMO called this paradise Eden. Adam and Eve eventually discovered it. They entered cautiously. Clear water and abundant fruit quickly replaced fear with childlike joy. Without immediate pressure to survive, the pair devoted themselves to learning. Sounds became words. Words became simple sentences. Adam and Eve named the world around them. Adam crafted wooden spears tipped with stone. Eve wove baskets from flexible plants. They cooked fish. They covered themselves. They built a wooden shelter. Children followed. Then more children. Human laughter spread through Eden. Each generation inherited language tools and accumulated knowledge. Life energy soared. Lin MMO became concerned about another problem. Intelligence without restraint could become dangerous. He wanted humanity to possess awe toward the power above them. Lin MMO sent a divine thought into every human mind. All fruit within Eden could be eaten freely. Only the blood-red crystal at its center was forbidden. Anyone touching or disrespecting it would be banished. Adam, Eve, and their descendants knelt in terror. For the first time, humanity consciously recognized its creator. The crystal became untouchable. Among Adam and Eve's descendants, one child was different. His name was Cain. Cain was stronger and more intelligent than his siblings. His true difference, however, existed in his eyes. Others looked toward heaven with reverence. Cain looked upward with curiosity and hidden resistance. He repeatedly approached the edge of the forbidden area. Cain asked why God feared anyone touching the crystal. Adam told him that obedience required no further explanation. That answer only deepened Cain's obsession. He wondered whether the crystal contained power greater than fire and language. Perhaps understanding it could make him a god. Cain matured into Eden's most talented young man. He improved weapons. He twisted plant fiber into rope. He created fishing nets. Praise from his people strengthened both his confidence and ambition. One moonlit night, Cain entered the forbidden zone alone. He stood before the blood-red crystal. The energy inside it seemed to call directly to him. Cain raised a sharpened stone spear. He asked God to forgive his curiosity. Then he struck the crystal. Far above the miniature world, Lin MMO nearly dropped the drink in his hand. Chaotic energy rushed backward through his connection to the sand table. Lin MMO immediately found the source. Cain lay beside the damaged crystal surrounded by ominous red light. Primal blood was leaking from the foundation of creation itself. Pure life essence, mixed with Cain's concepts of conquest, greed, selfishness, and power, a completely new energy formed. Dark, chaotic, filled with ambition. The harmonious growth of the world suddenly became sluggish. Cain stopped convulsing. He stood. Curiosity had vanished from his eyes. Cold reason and endless ambition remained. Cain looked at his frightened family with contempt. Then he declared that he would become God. He abandoned Eden. Lin MMO's first instinct was immediate destruction. With a thought, he could erase Cain more easily than crushing an ordinary ant. Divine pressure locked onto the rebellious human. Then Lin MMO stopped. For the first time, his world contained energy other than pure vitality. Cain's darkness was unpleasant, yet it was already disturbing the still waters of civilization. Until now, human development had been peaceful and almost unnaturally harmonious. Cain might become the pressure that forced history forward. Lin Memo decided to watch. His anger, however, still demanded an outlet. He turned his attention toward Adam, Eve, and everyone remaining in Eden. Their descendant had violated the divine taboo. Lin Memo declared the entire family guilty. Humanity was banished from paradise. Thorn-covered barriers rose around Eden. An invisible force pushed Adam and Eve into the barren, outside world. They looked back and found paradise hidden forever. The first humans wept. Lin Memo remained cold. His attention was fixed on Cain. The thief of divine blood was no longer simply Cain. Lin Memo gave him another name, Lucifer. Lucifer ignored his human relatives after leaving Eden. Their obedience disgusted him. He wanted followers worthy of strength. His attention turned toward the old ant kingdom. Ant civilization had continued developing while humans lived in paradise. It possessed agriculture, fire, and vast organized populations. Lucifer entered its territory alone. Soldier ants surrounded the strange two-legged intruder. The strongest attacked. Its jaws struck Lucifer's thigh with enough force to crush stone. A metallic crack echoed. Lucifer's skin remained unharmed. The soldier's jaws broke. Every ant froze. Lucifer grabbed the attacker. He tore its armored body in half. Green blood splashed across the ground. Lucifer issued a primitive declaration the ants could understand. Submit or die. Resistance collapsed beneath his stolen divine power. Lucifer conquered the ant kingdom. He did not stop there. Fire and stone were used to forge more effective weapons. Society was reorganized under a rigid hierarchy. Every worker, soldier, and breeder received a fixed duty. Rebellion was crushed without mercy. The ant kingdom became a war machine. Lucifer launched campaigns against every neighboring tribe. One civilization after another fell. The entire miniature world was eventually unified beneath his rule. Lucifer had built its first empire. Adam's descendants survived on poor land under the shadow of that empire. Lucifer showed them no mercy despite their shared origin. Humans became servants and slaves. Lin Mmo watched the result with a complicated expression. He had wanted pressure. Lucifer had created oppression on a continental scale. The Empire's wars increased evolution and produced enormous amounts of energy. Yet pure life energy was now contaminated by growing darkness. Lin Mmo needed a counterweight. He searched among enslaved humanity for someone capable of opposing Lucifer. Countless people prayed for salvation. Most prayed only because they were afraid. One young man was different. His name was Michael. Michael helped others even when doing so placed him at risk. He shared food. He protected the weak. More importantly, his faith did not disappear when suffering became unbearable. Lin Memo entered Michael's dream. A vast divine presence appeared before the kneeling human. Lin Memo told Michael that Lucifer had stolen power and corrupted creation. He offered the young man a mission. Become the Creator's messenger. Fight the fallen king. Free the enslaved. Michael accepted without hesitation. Lin Memo began another divine transformation. This time he envisioned power completely opposite to Lucifer's darkness. Sacred light, purity, wings as a symbol of divine authority. The sand table identified the combined concept as an angelic form. The price was enormous. Lin Mmo confirmed anyway. White light swallowed Michael. His body strengthened. A pair of radiant wings formed from his back. Holy energy entered his transformed flesh. When Michael awakened, he knew the dream had been real. The Creator had chosen him. Michael spread his wings. For the first time in history, an angel rose into the miniature sky. His first target was a slave settlement controlled by Lucifer's ant overseers. The prisoners stared when a winged figure descended in white light. Ant guards rushed forward with stone weapons. Michael raised one hand. Holy light gathered into a burning sword. He declared that their sins would be purified. Then the angel attacked. Every wing beat produced a violent gust. The sword of light sliced through armored shells. Sacred flames burned enemies already saturated with Lucifer's darkness. The overseers collapsed. Slaves who had forgotten hope stared in silence. Michael broke their restraints. He told them God had not abandoned the world. More settlements followed. Michael attacked outposts, liberated prisoners, and gathered survivors beneath his banner. His reputation spread faster than Lucifer's armies could suppress it. Humans called him the messenger of God. Some ants enslaved by the Empire joined him as well. The rebellion became a mixed force united by hatred of Lucifer's rule. Lucifer finally noticed. He responded by sending his most elite soldiers. The Black Armor Legion marched from the Imperial City. Thousands of hardened ant warriors moved like a living dark tide. Their commander was Azazel. Lucifer had personally strengthened him. Red veins crossed Azazel's massive shell. The rebellion prepared primitive defenses. Humans and ants built earthen walls. Archers gathered behind them. Spearmen formed barricades. Michael stood above his frightened followers. He told them that freedom would never be given by an oppressor. They would have to survive long enough to seize it. War drums thundered. The Black Armor Legion advanced. Arrows darkened the miniature sky. Most struck thick shells and bounced away. The black formation barely slowed. It crashed into the first defensive line. The earthen wall shattered. Ant soldiers tore through the barricades. The battlefield became chaos. Michael entered the fight with his sword of holy light. Every strike killed another black-armored warrior. Yet he was only one angel. Thousands of enemies continued pressing forward. Azazel finally confronted him. The massive commander mocked Michael's divine wings. Michael answered with his blade. Holy light collided with Azazel's giant weapon. The impact threw Michael backward. Azazel possessed far greater raw strength. Michael immediately changed his strategy. His advantage was flight. He avoided direct contests and attacked from unpredictable angles. Azazel pursued from below. Their battle crossed the battlefield repeatedly. Michael's holy light gradually burned through the commander's dark defenses. The rebellion gained courage. However, the larger war continued destroying everything around them. Among those treating the wounded was a human named Noah. Noah possessed no blessing. He had no wings. He could not tear enemies apart with divine strength. He simply refused to ignore suffering. Noah treated injured humans. He also helped wounded ant soldiers. Watching both sides die forced a terrible realization upon him. Lucifer and Michael were both becoming powers beyond the world's ability to endure. Their conflict might destroy the very creatures they claimed to lead. Noah began searching for another path. On the battlefield, Lucifer finally appeared personally. Darkness swallowed the sky around him. The fighting stopped. Even Michael understood that the true war had only now begun. Lucifer demonstrated his power with a casual thought. Darkness erased hundreds of rebel soldiers and the ground beneath them. A smooth crater remained. The battlefield became silent. Michael stared at the place where his followers had existed moments earlier. Grief became fury. He attacked Lucifer. Holy light and dark power collided. The miniature world trembled. Mountains cracked. Rivers changed direction. Shockwaves killed creatures far from the battlefield. LinMMO watched the world status deteriorate. His great experiment was entering an endangered state. Life energy production dropped rapidly. Michael, despite divine strength, began losing. Lucifer possessed primal blood stolen directly from the foundation of the world. Michael's borrowed blessing could not match that authority. Lucifer broke him. The angel crashed into a vast crater. Michael lay there with shattered wings and almost no strength remaining. LinMMO lost confidence in his chosen hero. Michael possessed power. His will, however, seemed too fragile when absolute defeat arrived. LinMMO prepared to abandon him. If necessary, he would destroy everything and design another counterweight. Then Michael heard something. Prayers. Across the battlefield, surviving people were still calling his name. Those he had freed were not demanding victory. They were asking him to stand. Michael remembered every slave who had looked at him with hope. He remembered the responsibility he had accepted. His broken fingers moved. Michael pushed against the ground. Lucifer watched with amusement. The angel stood. Something changed. Michael stopped begging heaven for additional power. He understood that faith without personal will had made his strength incomplete. The prayers of countless people flowed toward him. Holy light transformed. The angel's energy touched something deeper than LinMMO's original blessing. Golden laws appeared around Michael. His shattered wings reformed. Michael no longer felt like a simple messenger. He had become a higher being sharing the world's authority. Lucifer turned in genuine shock. Michael created a sword of golden flame. Symbols of prayer were replaced by chains representing fundamental order. Michael declared judgment. He vanished. The golden blade struck Lucifer before the fallen king could react. Lucifer blocked with his arm. The impact tore space and shattered the land. Their final battle exceeded ordinary life. Darkness represented endless desire and chaos. Golden order represented protection and restraint. Neither side could completely destroy the other. Their powers escalated. The world could not survive them. LinMMO watched the endangered warning become critical. Then the two beings released everything. Red darkness and golden judgment collided. Light swallowed the miniature continent. When LinMMO could see again, hundreds of miles of land had vanished. A bottomless crater scarred the world. Lucifer was gone. Michael was gone. Only two faint points of light remained. One was dark red. The other was pure gold. These were the final soul imprints of the fallen king and the angel. The lights circled and rejected each other. Neither could erase its opposite. Eventually, golden light rose into the broken sky. Michael's imprint disappeared above. Lucifer's dark imprint sank into the earth. The age of angels and demons had ended. Unfortunately, their war had nearly ended the world with it. Ecosystems collapsed. Weather became unstable. Survivors wandered through ruins. Lin Memo faced a difficult choice: allow nature to struggle through a slow recovery, or intervene on a planetary scale. His attention returned to Noah. The unblessed man still protected survivors. Noah had spent the war healing enemies and allies alike. His desire was not victory, it was survival. Lin Memo chose him. A divine voice entered Noah's consciousness. The world had been corrupted and devastated. A cleansing flood would come. Noah had 7 days to prepare. He was commanded to build an ark and preserve the remaining spark of life. Noah initially questioned whether exhaustion had driven him mad. The divine pressure surrounding the message removed that doubt. He ran toward the other survivors. Most did not believe him. Some laughed. Others accused Noah of spreading panic. Even those who believed saw an impossible problem. Only a few dozen people remained nearby. 7 days could never be enough to build a vessel capable of surviving a global flood. Noah refused to surrender. The survivors gathered wood. Craftsmen designed crude supports. Everyone worked until their hands bled. Lin Mmo quietly adjusted the environment. Suitable materials became easier to find. Animals sensing approaching disaster moved toward the construction site. Noah interpreted these events as signs from God. The ark rose piece by piece. On the 7th day, dark clouds swallowed the sky. The first drops fell. Then heaven opened. Rain crashed onto the damaged world. Rivers overflowed. Lakes merged. Water climbed across valleys and plains. Survivors rushed aboard the completed ark. Animals followed. The last entrance closed. The great flood swallowed civilization. Ancient settlements disappeared beneath violent water. The ruins of Lucifer's empire vanished. Battlefields were buried. The broken world entered its cleansing. Inside the ark, panic initially threatened to destroy the survivors. Noah imposed order. Food and water were counted. Supplies were distributed fairly. The sick received care. Animals were protected rather than treated as simple prey. Noah encouraged every survivor to share useful knowledge. Craftsmen taught younger people how to work wood. Healers explained herbs. Weavers taught their skills. Noah recorded the history of Eden, Lucifer, Michael, and the flood on wooden boards. He feared that forgotten history would force humanity to repeat the same destruction. For 40 days and nights, the ark endured endless storms. Lin Mmo observed quietly. The disaster he created was harsh. Yet inside one wooden vessel, cooperation was producing a stronger social foundation. When the waters finally began retreating, the survivors emerged into a transformed world. Old borders were gone. Familiar rivers had disappeared. New mountains and plains stretched across the land. Noah led humanity into its second beginning. Survival remained difficult. Giant beasts had evolved during the chaotic age. Humans possessed neither claws nor natural armor. Direct confrontation resulted in death. Some survivors wanted to hide permanently. Noah rejected despair. Humans possessed something stronger animals lacked: wisdom. They created traps. Rolling logs and stones turned terrain into weapons. Spears gained sharpened stone tips. Poisonous plant extracts were applied to projectiles. Cooperation replaced individual strength. Humanity began reclaiming the world through intelligence. Lin Mmo watched civilization recover, unaware that death itself had also started evolving. The soul imprints of Michael and Lucifer had not disappeared as completely as anyone believed. Michael's golden imprint gathered pure souls within a realm above the living world. Lucifer's dark imprint drew corrupted souls into a realm beneath the earth. Heaven and hell slowly formed without direct design from Lin Mmo. After death, souls carried traces of the lives they had lived. Michael's remaining will used holy energy to guide those filled with compassion and faith. Lucifer's remaining will welcomed greed, violence, and obsessive desire. Angels and demons gradually emerged from accumulated spiritual energy. Heaven attempted to inspire mortals toward virtue. Hell whispered temptation into vulnerable minds. Every converted soul strengthened one side. The rivalry between Michael and Lucifer continued beyond physical death. Lin Mmo stared at the new afterlife system in amazement. He had not created it. The world's own rules had evolved from the conflict between two exceptional beings. More importantly, both holy and dark energy could eventually become pure life energy for him. A sustainable cycle had formed. Living civilizations generated vitality through growth and activity. Dead souls entered heaven or hell and continued producing spiritual energy. Lin Mmo absorbed the converted result. His miniature world had become an increasingly efficient energy engine. Centuries passed inside the accelerated sand table. Humanity multiplied across the new continent. Tribes became settlements. Settlements became city-states. Agriculture expanded. Bronze tools appeared. Trade routes connected distant populations. Unfortunately, prosperity resurrected old human problems. Land created arguments. Rivers created disputes. Trade created greed. Weapons once designed for beasts were turned against other humans. Noah's lessons of cooperation slowly faded into ceremonial stories. Lin Memo watched city-states fight over resources. He saw merchants beaten by corrupt guards. He watched priests repeat words about God while ignoring suffering beside them. One young man refused to accept that hypocrisy. His name was Yellen. In the market of White Sail City, Yellen saw guards assault a merchant. He initially challenged them. The law protected the powerful. A direct confrontation would only create another victim. Yellen changed his approach. He paid the unfair fine. He helped the wounded merchant stand. Then Yellen climbed onto a high step in the market. He addressed everyone who had gathered. Yellen reminded them of Noah. Their ancestors had once shared food inside a crowded ark. They had survived because cooperation mattered more than tribe or wealth. Now humanity used God-given wisdom to create sharper weapons for killing its own people. Yellen asked whether this was truly the world Noah had struggled to preserve. The crowd became quiet. His words contained no divine power, yet people listened. That night, several young men and women approached him. They shared his dissatisfaction. Yellen formed a small group dedicated to spreading Noah's original teachings. They traveled from settlement to settlement. Their first major challenge was the Wildstone tribe. The tribe had spent years fighting its neighbors. Yellen's companions feared entering their territory. He went anyway. Wildstone warriors mocked the unarmed travelers. Yellen did not insult them in return. He lived among the tribe. He listened. He helped repair shelters. He treated injured children. When people complained about hunger, Yellen asked where their strongest workers had gone. The answer was obvious. Most were fighting. Yellen explained that endless war consumed the very strength needed to solve their poverty. Hatred had become a habit maintained long after anyone remembered its original cause. His simple reasoning slowly reached people who had heard only war cries for generations. A month later, Wildstone's leader personally escorted Yellen from the settlement. The once hostile chief promised to attempt negotiations with the Blackwater tribe. Lin Memo watched with genuine admiration. Yellen possessed no angelic blessing. He had stolen no primal blood. He commanded no army. Still, his wisdom and compassion achieved what overwhelming force repeatedly failed to accomplish. Yellen changed people without breaking them. His teachings spread. Villages established agreements. Trade replaced some raids. Shared roads connected former enemies. A church gradually formed around Noah's teachings and belief in the Creator. Yellen became its high priest. Lin Memo's attention eventually returned to his real body. Life energy had transformed him beyond anything modern medicine could explain. His cancer was almost completely gone. Only a stubborn group of abnormal cells remained. These cells behaved strangely. They no longer invaded healthy tissue without restraint. Instead, they had adapted to the life energy surrounding them. The cancer cells absorbed tiny amounts and entered a bizarre symbiotic state. Lin Memo could erase them instantly. He hesitated. Those cells were the final physical reminder of the dying man he had once been. Without the cancer, he might never have opened the abandoned sandbox. Without desperation, he might never have created life. Lin Memo decided to keep the harmless remnants. His illness had become a scar rather than an executioner. By then, another desire occupied his mind. Life energy had strengthened his physical body tremendously. Yet Lin Mmo still lacked the extraordinary abilities displayed by Michael and Lucifer. He could manipulate the sand table. Outside it, he remained bound by the rules of the real world. Lin Mmo wanted genuine supernatural power. Directly stealing authority from his own world seemed impossible. The sand table treated him as the external creator, not a creature operating under its internal laws. Lin Mmo searched for another method. Then he remembered Michael. Michael had originally received only a blessing. His greatest transformation occurred when faith, prayer, and personal will touched the world's laws. Perhaps intelligent beings could climb toward higher power by understanding creation itself. Lin Mmo looked at humanity's current civilization. Their progress had become slow. Religion preserved morality, but too much passive worship also consumed time and curiosity. People prayed for better harvests instead of studying soil. They begged heaven to cure disease instead of understanding the body. Lin Mmo frowned. Blind devotion was becoming another bottleneck. An old ruin from the age before the flood gave him an idea. Deep within the continent stood the remains of a colossal ancient structure. Later generations remembered fragments of it as a great tower. Humanity possessed neither the engineering knowledge nor organization required to rebuild it. That was exactly why Lin Mmo found it useful. He did not want to hand civilization a completed miracle. A gift produced gratitude. An impossible challenge produced knowledge. Lin MMO turned his attention toward High Priest Yellen. During prayer, Yellen suddenly felt a vast consciousness descend upon him. The pressure forced him to his knees. He immediately recognized the presence worshipped by humanity for generations. The Creator had answered. Lin MMO told Yellen that mankind's understanding of faith had become incomplete. Endless kneeling was not the highest form of devotion. The Creator had made a world governed by rules. Humanity possessed intelligence so it could explore those rules. To study creation was also to approach its Creator. Lin MMO revealed the existence of the ancient Great Tower. He commanded humanity to rebuild it. The tower would become a monument to knowledge. Those who climbed through understanding might touch a higher realm of existence. True devotion, Lin MMO declared, required active exploration rather than empty repetition. Yellen trembled beneath the revelation. This message could transform religion, politics, and civilization itself. Lin MMO gave his final command. Spread the revelation across the continent. Tell humanity that a ladder toward the divine realm had been lowered. How far mortals climbed would depend on their own wisdom and effort. The Creator's presence withdrew. Yellen collapsed soaked in sweat, but his eyes burned with unprecedented purpose. The following morning, he summoned church leaders and rulers from the city-states. Yellen announced the divine message before them. News spread across the continent and ignited arguments, excitement, skepticism, and ambition. Craftsmen imagined stronger tools, while scholars dreamed of discovering the laws hidden inside nature. Soon, humanity's finest builders, thinkers, and warriors began traveling toward the ancient tower site. Lin MMO watched them leave and remembered the frightened young man who once possessed only 3 months. He had searched for enough life to save one body and accidentally raised an entire history. Now he refused to solve humanity's challenge with another effortless miracle. The Great Tower would rise through their failures, discoveries, calculations, and accumulated wisdom. And as mankind reached toward the divine through knowledge, Lin MMO's dying world finally became a universe of limitless creation.